Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, March 20th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 166 days. The game against Michigan in 250 days. A couple quick notes before we get started with the bulk of today's show. First of all, the Ohio State women's hockey team lost 1-0 to Wisconsin in the national championship game. Buckeyes falling just one goal short of defending that national championship. Still a heck of a run for Nadine Muzzerall and her team. That is an incredible program. And I've plugged that program on the show before, but next year, just pick a day, get there early, and go watch that team play. They are incredible team, and congratulations to them on a fantastic season. One other piece of news that is probably not going to be super welcome for Buckeye fans, Brandon Hilleman. He is a safety who got released from his letter of intent at Notre Dame earlier this month. In the class of 2023, the Buckeyes were hoping to land him and to sort of bolster their 2023 safety class. He ended up committing to Michigan over the weekend, so you can scratch that one off the list of possible additions for this year's team already. So that's just wanted to mention that one as well, because we've talked about him on this show. So that is how that one ended. So and now we got that out of the way. Now let's talk about a couple guys who did transfer it to Ohio State. Tony Gerdeman is my guest this morning. He, I think, just enrolled as a freshman, so I don't think he's a transfer. But Tony, you just wrote about a couple additions that the Buckeyes made in their secondary. Davison Igbinosun, transfer from Ole Miss. Jihad Carter, transfer from Syracuse, a safety. I guess before we get into some specifics with those guys, that this feels like really almost the perfect kind of use for the portal for Ohio State. Spots where you need a guy, you go out, you get a guy. And, you have a little bit more proven depth there at the very least, and potentially more proven skill, for starting positions as well.
Yeah, first off, I'll just say it sounds like the Buckeyes dodged a bullet with this Hilleman character. But
ladies and gentlemen, he's kidding. I promise. Yeah. Anyway, Tony, on with the show.
On with the show. Thank you. As Ryan Day has said, they don't go to the portal to let's just go shopping and see what we can land. They go for starters or guys that will compete for a starting job. They don't promise starting jobs, but if they're going to bring you in, they're doing it because they're not just looking for a third guy at this position. They're looking for a guy who can compete to be a starter, and also, as Jim Knowles said, to push the other guys as well. And I think that's what both of those guys do, Davison Igbinosun and Jihad Carter. Guys who come to Ohio State accustomed to starting, guys who have both started as a freshman. Davison Igbinosun did it last year. Jihad Carter did it early in his career, 4 years ago. He's a 3-year starter at Syracuse. So these are guys who have won jobs, know what it takes, and they know what is required and asked of them, and they know that the standard that is, needed in order to stay in that starting lineup. So you bring those guys in, and they're not looking to sit the bench. They're not looking to I'll just be happy adding depth. They're looking to start.
Yeah, very rarely does Ohio State bring in someone who is not at all expecting to start. It's not promised, but it will happen occasionally. It happened this year with Tristan Gebbia. Tristan Gebbia coming in as the sort of third string quarterback this spring out of Oregon State, and he has talked very openly about the fact that this is really just sort of setting himself up for a post-playing career job as a coach, sort of start him on that path to a coaching position, and just trying to provide some veteran depth there. With Igbinosun and Jihad Carter, they are definitely on the other side of that divide. They are coming in, they're looking to win a job, and Igbinosun, in addition to bringing some veteran depth, Igbinosun also brings something that the cornerback room doesn't necessarily have a ton of, which is size. He really stands out when you're looking at him among the rest of those corners.
Yeah, and it's not like the Ohio State cornerback room is small, because they're all 6 foot, and Denzel Burke is listed at 6'1", but he makes them look small in comparison, because he's a guy that you stand next to wide receivers, and he looks tall, and he's a 6'2" corner, and looks every bit of it. He's not one of these 6'1" that is listed at 6'2" and tries to play that up. He just is, and he's a physical guy. And Jim Knowles said after the first day he was standing out and making plays and getting his hands on footballs. And we always go back on this show or Buckeye Weekly to the first practice we get to see of people and how quickly do they stand out. And Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson are kind of legends in that. But, and we didn't get to see Davison Igbinosun do all of these things, but he was being talked about, like he was making plays. And of course, he's not necessarily a true freshman. He's a true sophomore, but making plays right out of the gate for a new Buckeye, I think that's significant. And, it shows, at least at that point, that he's hit the ground running. All of these transfers that they brought in, the 5 total maybe of all of, including the special teams positions, they're kind of in backup roles to begin with so that they can learn the process and watch. But, he's watching and then making plays as well, and is seemingly doing as well as they would have hoped.
Yeah, and someone else who seems like he could be on track to be a starter or at least a valuable rotational piece at the very least is Jihad Carter. He kind of played the nickel position last year at Syracuse. Ohio State, of course, last year had a different transfer playing the nickel position. That was Tanner McAllister from Oklahoma State, who came in and was sort of the Jim Knowles whisperer because he knew the Jim Knowles defense from his time at Oklahoma State. Jihad Carter does not have that leg up on him. Knowles has ties to upstate New York, so maybe they can talk about Cornell versus Syracuse, pros and cons, who gets more snow, who hates snow more, who is more tired of the snow. I mean, there's so much to talk about upstate New York. But, they have with Carter, he's someone who you have Cameron Martinez, who's coming back at that nickel position. So there's, this is not a desperate need situation, but Jihad Carter certainly seems like as a 3-year starter, someone who, you watched a bunch of his games and he made some pretty significant plays last year for Syracuse. He's someone who, at the very least, is going to bolster the depth there and quite possibly could be the favorite to win that job.
Yeah, and Jim Knowles has talked glowingly about Cam Martinez, and a couple weeks ago mentioned how well he plays when he's healthy. He really likes him when he's healthy. And so he's going to be involved there. But when you look at what the Ohio State defense requires of that nickel, it's not just defending the slot receiver and man-to-man. It's when the offensive strength shifts from one side to the other, that nickel then becomes the deep safety and drops back a little and has to play a different kind of position. And if you look at around the country in terms of transfers who fit that mold, that's exactly what Jihad Carter did at Syracuse. There are times he is over the slot. There's times he's a deep safety. There's times he's in the box kind of as a linebacker. So everything that Ohio State wants to do with that nickel, he's already done it. Now, he hasn't done it in Jim Knowles' system, but he's done it all over the field in terms of I'm defending the slot. Now I'm, defending the deep half. Now I'm defending a deep third or deep fourth. He's done all these different things that will be asked of him in this defense, just different nomenclature and things like that. So I think that's a significant addition. An experienced guy, has played high-level football, and is capable of, I guess the biggest thing is, can he defend those slot receivers? Because, you look at some of the teams that Ohio State has played over the years, it's those slot receivers can be a nightmare. Rondale Moore and even Ohio State's own slot receivers give you an idea, because those guys can go off on you. So if you can handle them, then you've got a leg up on pretty much everybody you play.
Yeah, that is definitely a position where you have seen over the years. Penn State had a slot receiver in 2018 whose name I'm now blanking on, who had about a 90-something yard touchdown.
KJ Hamler.
Was it KJ Hamler? Okay. Yeah, he had a 90-something yard touchdown in that 2018 season. As you said, I'm sure you don't need to remind Ohio State fans about the Purdue game and the Rondale Moore game. Yeah, that is a spot where you can get burned. So yeah, that is going to be a very important spot on that defense. Whoever ends up starting there. I don't remember if I said, as you were talking, I was thinking, did I say Ithaca? Cornell's in Ithaca. I don't think I said the word Ithaca at any point. So that would be an Ithaca versus Syracuse fight. I don't know what I said, but I don't think it was Ithaca. So there you go. I'm going to correct myself before Tony gets a chance to correct me. Tony, last week, while the Buckeyes were off, Tony was writing his very popular What I Know, What I Think, What I Wonder feature at BuckeyeHuddle.com. One of the things you had in there was kind of interesting, and it was about Mitchell Melton, who is another guy who did not play for Ohio State last year. That was because of injury, not because he was on a different team, but he was sort of in the process of breaking out and was someone who you kept hearing positive things about last spring. and then he blew out his knee in the spring game, and that was it for the season. He's still not back this spring, and I thought you had some interesting thoughts on how that might play out in terms of how that jack position where he's potentially slotting in, how that's getting rolled out this spring.
Yeah, basically they're not going to be doing much, if anything, of the jack position this spring. And he's already talked about, Knowles has already talked about how they want Jack Sawyer focused on the defensive end position solely. And so that's one of the reasons they're not involving the jack this spring. But also, to me, and I think I wrote this, I think there's also the fact that Mitchell Melton isn't part of the physical aspect of spring football, so maybe they're holding the jack back just because he's their top guy. And so if he's not out there, you work on fundamentals of everything else. And I think if he was healthy, you definitely see it. I feel pretty confident in saying that. And he's healthy. He's been cleared for individual drills, but they're not pushing him for the 11-on-11s and 7-on-7s and things like that. And so if he was out there, I think you'd see that. But because he's not, there's no reason for it. And to me, that tells me that he is the guy that they want manning that position. You've moved Jack Sawyer away from it. He is the guy that Jim Knowles continues to talk about when you talk about the position, and people are like, hey, have you thought about CJ Hicks? Have you thought about Sonny Styles? And for him, it always comes back to Mitchell Melton. And so when we've talked about in the show, when coaches continue to bring up names that they aren't asked about, you need to put that in the back of your mind, or actually in the front of your mind, and wonder why that is and think about why that is. And the fact that he continues to do that with Mitchell Melton, I think, is a significant thing that people need to pay attention to. And that's one of the things to watch for this fall, in fall camp, when he gets to be put back on the field and that position, the jack position, gets to be put back on the field.
Yeah, that is going to be something for us to watch for later in the year. Right now, we're through 2 practices, and then Ohio State went on spring break last week. They are back this week, so the tea leaf reading and parsing of coach answers in press conferences, we have to do a little bit less of that maybe now moving forward, as the Buckeyes will be back on the practice field Tuesday and Thursday this week. We'll have interviews both days. And then, Tony, Saturday, you get to watch a scrimmage. This is a rare treat. We get to watch a spring scrimmage. Should be really interesting. What are some of the things you're looking for this week when we get to talk to guys and get to watch some of the spring ball? Yeah,
watching, of course, the one thing that everybody does is you just watch the ball and see where it goes. And, oh, gosh, did you see that catch? Or, oh, did you see that cornerback defend that? But I'm always looking for depth chart rotations. The offensive line, is Victor Cutler the center now? Is it still Carson Hinsman? Is, how much is Tigre Shabola at right tackle, getting the first team reps versus Zen Michalski? How is Josh Fryer looking at left tackle now that the pads are on and things are moving full speed? That's, I think, the offensive line you're going to be looking at quite a bit. And, oh, gosh, there is still the quarterback competition that we haven't really had to pay attention to for a while, because you just assume things are going to be fine. Like, yeah, CJ Stroud is a redshirt freshman, but he's going to be okay. And then, last year it's like, you don't even need to watch the quarterback. Now there's something to watch for, and how much Kyle McCord is running and how much Devin Brown is throwing, that sort of thing, where they're trying to show you that they can do what the other guy is known for. And so that's going to be interesting to watch. And seeing some of these young guys on defense, CJ Hicks, Gabe Powers, Jair Brown at corner, those kinds of guys, and these second-year defensive linemen, Hero Canoe, Amari Abor, Kenyatta Jackson, things like that. There's a lot to watch for, Tom. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot going on this week with those 3 practices, a couple interview sessions, all that stuff, and you can follow along with all of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We will have full coverage of all the stuff going on this week. This is the week where you start to really, first week is kind of like, okay, here's our starting data points. You sort of know where things start. Now you can, as Tony said, you're starting to track the movement. Okay, who is making a move, who's potentially jumping up the depth chart, who is impressive in the scrimmage on Saturday, all of that good stuff. You can find all of that coverage this week and next week and the week after that, and for the foreseeable future, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. As you know, this is a time when, if you've been thinking about it, if you're wondering like, hey, I've never been a member of a site like this, or I haven't been a member of a site like this for a while, this is a great time to give it a try. Treat yourself to a 30-day membership. Just sign up for the month-to-month option. See if you like it. That will get you all the way through spring ball and get you access to all of our great team coverage, all of our great recruiting coverage. It's going to be a busy recruiting week as well. And all of our great scheme coverage and X's and O's and all that great stuff, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.